everyone, welcome back. I feel like a YouTube channel, but here we are. So last time we discussed in section 10.2 ways that we name muscles, and in section 10.3 we're going to talk about fascicle arrangements. So we know that all skeletal muscles consist of fascicles, or different bundles of muscle fibers. So these arrangements are going to all be different. They're going to result in different muscles with different shapes and have different functional capabilities, so how they can contract and the movements that they can produce. The most common patterns of arrangements are circular, convergent, parallel, pennant, and I forgot to add fusiform. So circular, convergent, parallel, pennant, fusiform. You could probably come up with a really great acronym with those words. So if we take a look at what each one of those looks like, on the top left we have convergent, underneath that fusiform, parallel. The bottom three are all different kinds of pennant muscles, and then the one in the top right hand corner is a circular muscle. So you can see just on the anterior side of one human we have all of these different fascicle arrangements. So starting with circular, they are going to be arranged in concentric rings. So think about concentric rings like the lamellae in an osteon, so one ring, or like trees, rings of a tree. So in this case, our example is going to be our orbicularis oris. So oris sounds like oral, meaning mouth. So we have an orbicularis oris muscle that goes around our lips in a circular pattern. So it allows us to do things like pucker and kiss, or make duck faces in your photos. We also have an orbicularis oculi that runs directly around our eye as well in a circular pattern. Our next type is going to be convergent. So convergent muscles have a broad origin, so they all have one really thick origin that converges into a single tendon insertion. So if we're going to look at an example of that, so there's our circular muscle. You see it around the mouth there. If we look at a convergent muscle, the pec major is a great example of a convergent muscle. It has one very broad origin of muscle, so right along almost the entire length of the sternum, super, super broad. And then it's going to converge and insert into one small tendon, one singular tendon, I shouldn't say small, but a singular tendon that inserts on our humerus. Next, we're going to look at parallel muscles. So fascicles that are parallel to a long axis in a strap-like muscle. So a good example of this is going to be our sartorius muscle. So the sartorius, let me stand up real quick, is going to run basically from the ASIS all the way down to the medial condyle of our femur. So it's a long strap-like muscle that runs directly parallel with our femur. Next we have fusiform. I think the bicep brachii, again, is a great example of a fusiform muscle. So it's basically spindle-shaped muscles with parallel fibers. So the parallel fibers are all going to be running in the same direction, as you can see here, but it's kind of large, and what we would call like a muscle belly in the middle, so it kind of bulges out and it has two tendons on either side. So again, we're looking at the bicep brachii here. And there's an example of your parallel muscle that you can see the sartorius in the thigh. And finally, we have pennant muscles. So baseball fans, when you guys think of a pennant, what I think of is like a banner or a flag, you know, like the Cubs winning the pennant or something like that. But pennants kind of look like feathers in a way. They have a very short fascicles that are attached to a central tendon that run the length of that muscle. So if we look at the three forms of pennant, we have a unipennant muscle. So fascicles or muscles are only going to attach on one side of that tendon. On a bipennant muscle, we have fascicles inserting from opposite sides with a central tendon in the middle, and then multipennant appear as feathers inserting into one single tendon. So our deltoid is an example of that. And we're going to look at all three of these here. So if we look at a unipennant muscle, you can tell there's only fascicles and muscle fibers on one side of that tendon. Right here, we're looking at the extensor digitorum longus, which is down in the lower leg, extensor digitorum longus. So it's a long muscle that extends our digits, the rest of our toes 2 through 5, it's going to extend on your foot. But you can see it has a really central tendon with oblique fibers, or fibers coming out at an oblique angle from that central tendon. Next, we have bipennant muscle. So the muscle that we're looking here is our rectus femoris. So you can see it has that same central tendon, but it also has muscle fibers on both sides. So we have those oblique fibers running off of both sides of that central tendon. And then finally, we are going to look at a multi-pennant muscle. So multi, obviously more than two. Here we can see with our deltoid, it has multiple. It's got actually 3 heads to that, and you can see those 2 in the middle right there kind of look like a feather, where it's got that central tendon. Even within one division of that same deltoid muscle, it's got its own bipennant muscle arrangement, and then we can see there's another central tendon there as well, with fascicles arranged off of both sides. So that was a real quick recap of section 10.3 and fascicle arrangements. And if you guys have any questions, as always, Zoom me.